well, perhaps just a few words about myself and the organization. I'm currently a Vice Executive Director of the Albanian Office of Cultural Heritage Without Borders, an organization that works in Albania and in the region since 3 decades, basically. And our core expertise relies on 3 pillars. Firstly, and most importantly, technical processes such as restoration and revitalization of built heritage. That was our historical kind of expertise that later on, in a process of adaptation also of the needs of the context where we work mostly, evolved into the second pillar, which is education based on heritage and awareness raising activities, techniques, campaigns. And we will talk a bit about this in the next couple of minutes. And thirdly, and this is also a pillar that is growing bigger year after year, and that is community-based heritage management and development processes. Well, today we are going to talk a bit about a very specific program that is called KA KUSH E KA. Dusan, you pronounce it in a very correct way, thank you. And this is a traditional game that was played and still is played by kids in Albania nowadays, and it's the equivalent of the tag game. That would be the signification in English. You know, that game when you run after somebody, you touch that somebody, and that somebody is frozen until someone else comes and unfreezes the person. So if you like, this is a transmission game, and this is exactly what we are trying to aim with this program, to set up games, booklets, and nice methodologies that are aimed at teaching about heritage in a nice, entertaining, and fun way. And we are aiming through this program to work directly with children from the age of 4 years old to the age of 11 years old. But indirectly, by working with this specific target age, we also are aiming to work with their parents, of course, and the families, of course, and the teachers, educators, be them in schools or in other type of educational or cultural institutions. So if you like, the scope of the activity and the target is very much wider than, let's say, just children. Well, perhaps a bit of a basic kind of framework where we work. You know that for everyone and everywhere, in the families, in schools, in educational systems, education is you know, one of the most important investments in life, of course. But recently there is a trend that specifically targets heritage education as one of the most important, let's say, component of formal education nowadays in Europe. And in 2018, according to a study that was done on the European level, the finding was quite astonishing. 90% of European citizens agree that Europe's cultural heritage should be taught in schools, as it tells us about history and culture and so many more things. You will all agree with me that this is, you know, like given to take for granted, but I would say that it is not actually. And in the context where I come from, because of the difficulties of the formal educational system to adapt to new trends, you know, this is not, you know, heritage, for instance, in Albania nowadays is not taught as a specific class, or there are no specific textbooks about that. And there is a big discussion going on right now on whether we should have something like this in the formal system. In our points, from our perspective as an organization that works with communities on a daily basis, this is, you know, something that needs to happen. And this is why we started since the years 2010 to propose, let's say, formal learning processes and informal methods of talking and teaching about heritage, as there was a need about that. And there are learners and users, and be them children or adults, as I said before, that have that kind of demand. And our intention is with this methodology to impact somehow the national curricula. And that being said, one of the aims that we have with this program is to become part of the national curricula, and also to be part of the, you know, to be part of a change in the mindset and how we see heritage as a source also for societal development through learning and through engagement. For this reason, we have developed a collection of booklets, games, and other type of items that tackle specifically heritage issues, and we do that in a very interesting way. We focus a lot on graphic quality of all the products of these educational models that are developed. We work a lot with interpretation of heritage, which is still, I think, in the Balkans region, or at least in the Western Balkans, is not yet valorized as it should be, compared to other type of investments that are being done right now in the heritage sector. We are also making sure that in the making of these models, we are including the diversity of points of view, be that from the end users, the learners, kids, but also educators, but also trying to engage specialists from different types of expertise, and especially senior experts that are somehow left outside of the market because of the recent changes we had in the past 30 years in Albania. Zooming in a bit more on how we do these things, I would say that the first source of inspiration for us when we do this kind of models is the projects that we have already done, finished, completed, or projects that we are working on at the moment. What you can see here in the screen is a concrete restoration project that we completed exactly 10 years ago in Girokastra in the south of Albania, a UNESCO town. And this is a house that was restored in the time span of 4 years, and that actually served as a learning process for many of my colleagues and myself here in the project, here in the organization. And when the project was completed, delivered, then everything was placed in a drawer and was kind of lying passive there. What we decided to do was to kind of revisit all the knowledge acquired through this project, and why not challenge ourselves? It started as a joke, really, in the beginning, to challenge ourselves and to propose a paper model that kids could play with and could also, learn a bit more about a technical process such as the restoration of a traditional building. And we eventually, try after try, we succeeded, and we developed this Babameto model, the Little Restorer's big house, which actually now has, enables kids to complete in 45 minutes what took us 4 years to do. So in a way, it was also a nice way to engage children of ages from 8 to 11 years old. This requires a bit more dexterity and a bit more coordination in order for the models to be complete and to be looking as nice as the real restoration, actually. A second way of coming up with models that are included in the KA KUSH E KA collection is to work directly with museums or cultural sites all across Albania, and with the intention of helping them develop tools corresponding to their educational programs. One of the most interesting items was a coloring book that we developed with the National Museum of Photography of Marubi in Shkodra. And allow me to share a bit of context of that project before. So Marubi, this museum, has one of the finest collection of 19th century photography and early 20th century photography, but which for some reason, and according to the diagnostic that was made by the staff of the museum, was only interesting for either academics or either fine connoisseurs of photography, but not really engaging a lot with community nearby, with people from Shkodra, basically from the city. And therefore we decided to embark in a journey that led us to this book, to this coloring book called Black and White in Colors, that consisted in producing, in first engaging with artistic high schools all across Albania to develop, based on historical photos, nice little sketches like this one that you see here, that actually made sure that Marubi was traveling also outside of this museum in remote areas, in schools that were located elsewhere. of course, provided the high school students with like a bit of practical hands-on training opportunities, but also allow them to get to know better a bit this fantastic collection of Marubi, and then to also leave their mark, if I may say so, on on the history of Marubi as an institution by producing this very interesting, let's say, drawings that then, together with a team of professional designers and designer educators, we compiled in a book that right now is being used. I mean, not only at the museum in Shkodra, but also in other schools elsewhere in Albania. Then a third way we come up with models that are part of the collection are to put the focus specifically on underrepresented heritage, talking in the Albanian context, of course, which allows us to tackle through booklets and models designed for children difficult subjects. Allow me to take a very quick example on this small booklet about fustanella, which is one of the most important traditional clothes for Albanians. It's actually a dress for men, a skirt for men that was widely used in Albanian territories until the beginning of the 20th century. A skirt for men that was used for such a long time that naturally leads to a very interesting discussion, namely about gender roles and gender balance. I just wanted to remind you that we do that with a very early with kids coming from 6 to 11 years old, as I was telling before, and sometimes it's interesting to see also the reactions of the teachers themselves. We have had occasions where we were in the classrooms, and then teachers were already a bit skeptical about what is this skirts for men taught in my class. So we had also those type of reactions. And this is something that I think is very important to us, is to stick and to have the courage to talk about, let's say, difficult subjects and issues, of course, in a very careful way, in a very constructive way. But also the difficulty lies in how far do you go with the let's say with the degree of difficult subject that you include in the narratives that you are proposing. And I will share another example with you, which is well, the first sketch that we did of this image that you are seeing right now. So allow me to briefly describe this image. So this is a spread that is taken from the book. We have men wearing dresses that can be found all over the world, and these three men are all fighting against a specific type of discrimination. Well, would you like to see what was the sketch idea for this spread? I'll show you right away. This was the first idea for the spread that included a fourth person, which is Conchita. I'm sure many of you remember Conchita, the winner of the Eurosong Vision contest a few years back. And Conchita exactly matched the philosophy with the slide. A man wearing a dress that fights against a specific type of discrimination. So how far do you go? Would you have included Conchita in this spread? Of course, I'm not expecting an answer because I'm not there, obviously, but I just wanted to illustrate that how far you can go with this type of thinking and where do you draw the line. This is actually a really crucial question when it comes to educational models. Just to conclude on this story, of course, you saw the spread, the final variant of the spread, which is this one. We ended up not including Conchita because at the time when we were finalizing this booklet, it was at the very beginning of the program, and we were also, cautious in not, raising too many eyebrows with a nascent, let's say, collection of models and games. So, but who knows? Maybe in a re-edition of this version of booklets, the question is still there. So, will we update this spread and add Conchita to go even further in our discussions on difficult subjects? The future will tell us. Then, some of our recent additions continue down this alley. For instance, the model that you can see right now in the screen, it's a giant coloring paper that is actually inspired by a fresco that was done in the 80s when Albania was still under the communist dictatorship, and where artistic freedom was very limited and very confined. So in a way, with this new item, it called medieval Kruja. Kruja is an important town in central Albania. We wanted to also, in a way, draw a bit of interest on these artists and these professionals that risk their lives sometimes while doing their art, and we should also know about them. And I personally believe that it's important also for discussions and dialogue on liberty of expression and arts, and the courage it takes to defy sometimes standards and canons. We should talk about that also at a very early age. Another interesting example that goes down this line is a new booklet that we developed just at the end of last year, which is called The Printing Press of Voskopoja, which was one of the first printing presses in the Balkans region back in the 16th century. This booklet is interesting from the aspect not only of the subject it treats about, but also for the fact that for the first time, we did it in a bilingual way, where we used both Albanian standard language, but also the Aromanian language, which is in Albania there is a linguistic minority, which is called the Aromanians, that have played a very important part in the country's history. But unfortunately, that contribution remains yet largely unknown, especially in the history and in the textbooks that kids from 6 to 11 years old, use in their formal kind of curricula. Then the other fun part about these educational models is that we use them as a prompt to organize public events. We call them heritage ateliers, which consists in organizing on-site activities, such as in this archaeological site, which is famous in Albania, Apollonia, located near the city of Fier in South Albania, where children can actually see and touch and really feel the atmosphere of a real kind of site, of a real monument. Because oftentimes we have noticed that even people from schools, or especially from villages or rural areas coming in this near these towns, actually rarely have the opportunity to go and visit these monuments. So it's a big problem of access, and this is also for us a way to tackle this huge difficulty, because teachers cannot have the responsibility to take kids in excursions. So it takes a lot of effort, a bit of funding, and a bit of courage to do that. And right now, teachers in Albania tend to be a bit discouraged to do often this kind of excursion, which contributes, on the other hand, to widening this gap between the communities and heritage assets, monuments themselves, which is a big problem, of course, for us as professionals. These are also moments where us and other heritage professionals coming from partnering institutions, NGOs, or individual contributors become part of this discussion, and this is why it's very helpful to discuss not just about the monument or the booklet that we developed, but also to have the chance as a kid, as a young boy or a young girl, to discuss and to ask questions to professionals that are dealing on a daily basis with these monuments. And actually it works fine. Most of the times we get the most interesting and the most challenging questions from the pupils, from young kids, rather than the teachers themselves. So to us, it's just an additional indicator of existing demand and interest for more models and for more engaging and interactive and fun-based methodologies and tools. One of the most successful models that we have developed consists in board games that are inspired by also another type of traditional game, which was very famous, especially under the communism time, which was called Don't Get Mad. And the board game consisted at the time with a set of challenges that players needed to overcome, and by throwing the dice you would take you to complete these different challenges to reach the end of the game and win, or oftentimes the dice would also decide for you to return to the very beginning of the game, and hence the name of the game don't get made. He refined a bit, twisted a bit the logic of this game to adapt it to, let's say, as a tool for presentation of a wider territory's heritage, including not only important monuments, assets, cultural heritage sites, and so on and so forth, but most importantly, a lot of storytelling. Storytelling focused on professions, local professions. Storytelling focused on the role of women, because again, another set of discussions that we are having in Albania is that so many women have contributed not just to local history, but to national history as well, but their names remain still largely unknown from the public. And therefore, we are using the opportunity of this game to draw attention on these very important national figures. About dialects, we talk about culinary, let's say, specialties of the different territories, and all this proposed and packaged into a fun game there that the children can play either at home with this table format, or also in public squares, in open spaces, and in possibly in spaces near municipalities and museums, or important decision makers in the cultural heritage field. Because by doing this, we want also to show them and to make it very clearly visible that there is a lot of interest for this type of methods, for this type of tools, and that it's also a way to put pressure a bit on the decision makers on the value of investing in heritage in general. This is also a method that was also recognized in 2018 as one of the best European heritage stories. We won a prize back then, and we have continued to cover a lot of cities and regions in Albania, combining both widely known historical cities, but also less known smaller towns and regions, just to make sure that there is also a balance countrywide between the information that we are providing. Since this has resulted in a very, very successful way of engaging with public, and very effective way to communicate about heritage, we have continued in this way with very different spin-off projects. Very briefly, I want to mention here the Design and Heritage Empowering Communities project, thanks to which we built large cardboard-made models representing important monuments here in Tirana. The specificity of these models were that they were modular, and that kids in public spaces could also play with them and form, other types of shapes, as you can see here in the images, with these different, let's say, modular shapes. We have included here also the National Theatre of Tirana, which at the time was being protected by the people against a governmental project that consisted in demolishing the theater in order to develop the whole area. So again, I'm emphasizing here that it's important to use this type of tools and methods and channels established with kids and their parents to talk also about current issues, and not just about positive stuff that heritage usually tends to evoke. Fortunately, that theater was torn down in May 2021, but so this is also a type of memory of that theater that remains through this game. To continue with also another recent project that we finalized, and that is a project that consisted in helping 4 sites in Albania that are currently under restoration process because they were damaged by the big earthquake in 2019 here in Albania. Focus of these projects was only on physical interventions, while we also wanted to make sure that in parallel to this physical intervention and in parallel to the technical process of remusealization for some of the sites and really kind of revitalization of the site, to make sure that there is also a beginning of an educational program for each of these sites, and therefore we worked with a wide, let's say, array of professionals, with young illustrators, with senior, experts in each of these specialties, and with people from local communities, with municipalities, with representatives of local association and creative industries. It was a 9-month project that led to the creation of 4 very high quality educational models that right now are used in all these municipalities, and that actually are an outcome not of CHwB Albania work, but an outcome of these communities of people that gather together to work and to co-produce, co-create, which is also another important trend in nowadays heritage, let's say, development discussions. These very fine models. And perhaps also another type of engaging activity that we are very fond of, very proud of, is CHwB, a restoration corner that was set up in an ongoing construction site, restoration site in Durrës, in the old Byzantine wall of Durrës. Just to set it clear, in Albania, as in many other places in the world, working sites are no-go areas for the public, and actually that creates a bit of a, for us, that creates a bit of a gap that doesn't necessarily have to be there, because in order to valorize heritage, in order to understand how difficult it is to upkeep it and to maintain it, sound and healthy, we think that the public, and especially younger public, needs also to have access to these processes that consist in healing monuments or in taking care of the monuments. And therefore, together with our donors in this project, you can see them at the top of the slide, we decided to carefully create a corner in an ongoing working site where people, especially from school, could come and could see us in full transparency and witness all the difficulties that are related to working site and the decisions that have to be taken on the spot and so on and so forth, just to make it very open to the public and to say to the public that at the end of the day, working site or not working site, this is heritage that belongs to the society, and at all times people have access and need to make sure that they have access in this kind of heritage. And this is a methodology we are trying to adapt and to develop in all our let's say working sites, and particularly in Durrës, it worked very well because it's an urban area. It's a very important monument of the city, and therefore we had a lot of visitation and a lot of ideas gathered as well on how to make the site work further after the restoration process. Well, it's Friday, it's end of afternoon, so I'm probably going to stop here for the experiences that we want to share. But if you want to embark down this way, and if you want to kind of get inspired by this type of projects, there are a couple of ideas that I would invite you to think about when embarking in this road. Try to reuse finished projects or experiences and knowledge that you have already gathered, but just try to see it from a different perspective. And also take the balcony view sometimes in comparison to the kind of logic and the thinking that we are developing when in a project cycle. Then always be open-minded to engage with new people, a new person, and new audiences in the making of these models, but also always try to include new topics and relevant topics for the society as well in this type of models. Of course, as in our case, it started out as an activism kind of project, but then we saw that teachers and educators were in a lot of need for this type of pedagogical tools, and therefore we remained by their sides, and we developed for them and with them more than 25 models in less than 7-8 years now. And most importantly, I think that what works very well with this, because we are talking about heritage, which is a nice thing in general, kids and parents, which of course is a nice thing in general. So use the opportunity to bring all these elements together publicly in a real public space, not just in virtual spaces and digital methods, but use areas in the cities, in the villages, make it visible, make it very clear that there is a demand for heritage education and for heritage entertainment in general. And actually, chances for you to be successful are very high, because, as you know, interpretation specialists very often say, if the content that you develop works for kids, it's likely that it will work for all types of other audiences. So this is also something very practical and very tangible that doesn't require a lot of expertise or funding or time. So I will stop here, and thank you very much for your attention. And please, if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer to them.